Lovely to be with you tonight, and lovely to be with you for what is a special occasion, because the guy we've got tonight is quite exceptional, part of our history, and we're proud of that. A guy that was in at the birth of the Entertainers. Can you remember when we were actually entertainers? I mean, wonderful, wasn't it? Wonderful. Those days will come back, baby. Don't worry about it. Those days will come back. Yeah. This guy was in at the birth of the Entertainers. He went on to play for Chelsea because, for family reasons, he had to leave here. He went with our blessing. He played in the FA Cup final for Chelsea. He played in the European Cup Winners' Cup semi-final for Chelsea. He then had a magnificent career in broadcasting, but we're looking at his autobiography tonight, which is From Pitch to Pulpit, and it's quite an extraordinary story that no one else in football, I think, could write and has experienced it. It's quite astonishing. He'll be telling us all about it. He's come from Calgary in Canada to be with us tonight. As far as I'm concerned, he's come home. Welcome back, Gavin Peacock.
Thanks, Gibbo. Thank you, lovely. What are we doing here?
And just in case you're wondering, you think we're both auditioning for Peaky Blinders.
Peaky Blinders.
Which in fact we are. We're not going to match tomorrow. We're going to go and play Peaky Blinders. I'm wearing it in case there's a woodpecker flying around. You know, you've got to be careful. Lovely to have you with us, my friend. Fascinating life, and an amazing start to your career in football, because your family was steeped in football. Dad,
yes,
and unbelievably, considering we think South London, etc. Dad was from South Shields, so that when you come to play for Newcastle, you were in some ways coming home.
Yeah, very, very much so, Gibbo. And I just like to say, you know, it's just always great to be back here, seeing old friends, old faces. Brought my wife Amanda with me. We're staying in Durham City, actually, at the hotel, the Royal County Hotel. We lived in Durham for the time that I played for Newcastle, and she's not been back up here for 20 plus years, and so it's just been a real emotional and nostalgic time for us to be back in Durham, our old stomping ground, and being part of such a special time at the club. But yeah, for me, growing up in a footballing family, Dad played for Charlton Athletic, my dad Keith. He played for 17 years for Charlton. He's appeared more times than any outfield player in Charlton's history. The only other player that has appeared more than him is Sam Bartram, and he was a goalkeeper. And other things that my dad is remembered for is that he was the first substitute ever used in English League football. So So I always say, back in the day, when men were men, and it was 11 v 11, and if you broke a leg, you just ran it off, because there's no sub on the bench, right?
Absolutely.
Which is proper, like none of this kind of squad game thing. And then they decided we're going to introduce the 12th man. And on the day in 1965, Charlton were playing, I think, Bolton at home in August of 65. And my dad was number 12. He was on the bench, and there was an injury, and he got on, and he was clocked. First substitute ever used in English football. And it's actually a Trivial Pursuit question. He hates it because he says, I played more times than any outfield player in Charlton's history, and I get remembered for not being good enough to be in the starting lineup on that particular day. I was a number 12. But you know, Dad was great. You know, a lovely, stable home, and with my dad being captain of Charlton, and just having that example, plus his coaching and encouragement, it was really good. But the first kit I actually ever had was a Newcastle kit. And you see me in the book, I've got a picture up when we would come up here, because my nan and granddad, my granddad Tom and my nan Lydia from South Shields, So we'd come up to see family. We've got my Uncle Jim and Auntie Judy here, my cousin Simon still. So we've got plenty of family up here. So we'd come up for holidays, and I got Super Mac T-shirt, and I mean, I'm going to be on his table tomorrow at the game. Yeah, Super Mac's my hero. And I had the Newcastle strip, and there's a little picture in the book, me with my cousins, and I'm like a mini professional footballer at age sort of 6 years old. Who knows that? Who would have known that a decade or so later I was going to captain the team and get us to the Premiership?
And Grandad saw you do that at home.
Yeah, the day I signed for Newcastle, my granddad Tom, it was an emotional moment for him, and he said to me, if you sweat blood for their team, he said, those fans will forgive you many mistakes on the field. They just need to know that when you pull on that black and white shirt, that you will go and die for the team. Because if they could do it, they would. And I always remember those words. And I think
you give the team talk tomorrow, because that's exactly what the message
it is. Well, it certainly is. Yeah. And so I think I had that attitude, and the fans did forgive me many mistakes, and then I hope I did a few good things on the field as well. But then, and we will talk about it, but as we go on, I'll mention my granddad when we talk about other things.
I mean, the early days, coming from a football family, you think of the red naps and the lampposts, it's sort of in the blood. And you hit the floor running, you were picked for England boys, and everyone that ever plays for England boys is signed up for a league club, because that's what league clubs do, and it's what the kids want. Your dad, being shrewder because he was in the game, he didn't allow you to sign for him. So
Correct.
You end up virtually the only player in the England boys squad that isn't with a league club, which is wonderful, because then everybody wants you.
Exactly, it was a good move from my dad. I thought I was playing enough football at the time, and to then sign as a schoolboy for a professional club and add games to that would have been actually a hindrance rather than a help. And so, age 15, playing for England schoolboys, I was actually in the squad with Ian Bogie from Newcastle, Tony Nesbitt as well. I mean, older folks may remember those names. A couple of Geordie boys there who were always good fun, very talented players. But yeah, everyone was signed, and so as an England schoolboy then, every club in the country wanted me. And so there were clubs, there were the small clubs like Liverpool and, and Tottenham. And,
Hey. I don't know what you're laughing at, he's just got it right. Absolutely. But Liverpool quite seriously did, wasn't it?
Yeah, they were interested. Aston Villa, Tottenham, Arsenal, and QPR I chose in the end because obviously he was a London boy, but the manager was Terry Venables, and they were in the top flight. So Terry was a bright young manager. They had the plastic pitch, first plastic pitch in the top flight.
Yes.
Yeah, and they had some players as well. The Tony Curry, John Gregory, Clive Allen. Some really good players, top players, and they were a club that brought young players through. So I thought I'd have a good chance of coming through under Venables at QPR. Ended up signing.
You lived at home, if you like, as well.
Lived at home, travelled into London from there. I left school at 16 after my GCSEs, and I was a pro.
I mean, you made your debut, what, 19 with QPR?
Yes.
Yeah. And in the teams you would be as a boy, but one of the problems, and you're absolutely right, everybody I talked to who was an ex-player, I was just talking to Supermarket today about a totally different situation, and he's saying, when you're young, you've got to play. There's some players spend a year out, be it injury or be it that they're not selected, and you can stagnate your growth. You've got to keep playing competitive football. And you decided you needed that, didn't you? But I mean, having decided that, and I think this is a great part of the story, because how often does this happen? Having decided that, you're tapped to go to a club by your own dad, over the Weetabix on a morning because he's manager of Gillingham. Can you imagine that? I mean, there should be a law against that, being tapped by your old man. I mean, have you been on the QPR to say he could ask you?
Yeah,
Can you tell the story?
Yeah, for sure. So Jim Smith, so Venables left, and then Jim Smith came in. Of course, Jim was manager up here, and Jim gave me my first team debut. You know, he was a growler and he was a gruff kind of guy at times, but he actually knew football, and he took a gamble on younger players, got me into the first team. And I was doing all right, and England under-19s by then, and signed a new contract. But as you say, I was in and out of the team, only 2 subs in those days as well, so difficult to even make the bench sometimes. And they weren't playing me in my right position. I wanted to play central midfield and attacking, and they were playing me out wide quite a bit. So, you know, I was thinking maybe I need to get somewhere, even on loan, where I can kind of play regularly here, week in and week out. Living at home at the time. By this time, my father's retired from playing, and now he's the manager of Gillingham Football Club. And my dad, you know, he brought through players. Well, Steve Bruce was a 19-year-old when I was there. Very.
By the way, that's Steve Bruce, the player.
The player. And he was a lionheart of a player. Tony Cascarino, other players like that, and so I'm sort of sitting at breakfast one morning, and Dad's looking at me, and he's about to go to work to Gillingham, and I'm about to get on the train to go West London to train at QPR, and he's gone, you know, I've got a problem in midfield. I've got a couple of injuries. He says, occurs to me, he said, the solution might be sitting opposite me at the breakfast table here. He said, how do you fancy coming to Gillingham?
Was that your mum sitting opposite him?
Yeah, she may have done a better job than me, actually. I said, yeah, I'm up for that, Dad. And so he rang Jim. They were friends because they knew each other when Jim was at Oxford days. And I ended up going on loan to Gillingham, playing for my dad, and I ended up signing there. Took a gamble to go down a couple of divisions to come back up again, but to develop my game and play in and week out. And it was quite the thing, because then there's a challenge of playing for your dad.
Yeah, oh, that can be tough. Both with the crowd and you wondering about Dad, how does Dad handle that?
Correct, and also with the other players. And I talk about this a bit in the book. You know, it's a difficult thing. I mean, it's been done. Jamie Redknapp did it with Harry Redknapp, obviously Brian Clough, Nigel Clough. And I think my dad said to me, he said, I'll give you 2 bad games and then I'll drop you. He said, I won't be praising you even as much as the other players because I can't be seen to give you any favouritism at all. But I think we worked it quite well. And I think you have to be one of the better players in the team. Otherwise, if you're struggling, the other lads aren't going to have it.
Sure,
yeah.
Absolutely.
So it was good. It was a good experience, and I enjoyed my time at Priestfield, and I really developed as a player.
You played what, up to about 80 games?
Correct. Yeah. You know your stats, don't you?
Well,
you could get a job. You could get a job in journalism.
No. You take it far too far. That's Mike Ashley. He said I could never get a job.
Oh, don't. Yeah.
Look,
great that you're back, though, eh?
It's got to be. That's great. Tell you what, pal, this is my club and their club. It's one Ashley's club. He just had temporary transport. How But looking at when you were Gillingham, you were playing your best position, playing regularly, but having the extra pressure, Gavin, and being the boss's son.
Yeah.
If you made it the right stuff, that does make you develop. You can develop quickly, I would have thought, as a player.
Yes, I think that's correct. You know, not only playing every week, but actually playing under that particular pressure, and maybe having the wisdom to navigate it with the other players, really stood me in good stead. Dad didn't stay there forever. I ended up leaving a year later, and Harry Redknapp bought me for a club record. Yeah.
In terms of football education, going to then play for Harry is not a bad move because he was a top manager that knew the game, and he was really getting into his stride at Bournemouth at the time.
Well, it's interesting because my dad advised me on very much on managers. You know, like signed for QPR. There's Terry Venables there, and then there were a lot of teams interested me at Gillingham, and Bournemouth, not the biggest team to sign for, but he said, Harry Redknapp, bright manager, he's going to go all the way, and he's a football guy through and through. Signed for him, so I ended up signing for Harry. Amanda and I literally just got married.
Before you signed, you were married.
I signed
down there.
I signed for Harry in the summer. We got married just a few weeks later at the beginning of the season, and she didn't know. Poor girl didn't know what she'd let herself in for.
Is that with Bournemouth or you?
With marrying a footballer. We met at night school. Okay, so I was playing for QPR, and I thought, again, Dad giving good advice, and my mum too, like, you could get injured, carry on with a bit of your education because you didn't do your A-levels. So I did English 1 year, second year I choose history. First night I walk into the history night class, the only space left at the table was filled by my future wife, Amanda. She came in late, she sat down, I thought, I like her smile, I'm going to chat to her at the break. She says,
you should have been concentrating on the lesson.
yeah, I know, I was kind of distracted. I never ended up taking the exam, I got a wife out of it. And then she says to me, she says, oh, what do you do then? So I thought, I got this in the bag, professional footballer. It's going to get the girl every time, right? I said, oh, I'm a professional footballer. She went, oh, I don't really like football at all. Oh dear, I thought, oh no, I'm being humbled here. But then,
it's a challenge.
Yeah, it was a challenge. But then she liked me for myself. So anyway, a couple of years later, we do get married, and this is the wedding weekend. Play Blackburn at home for Bournemouth. I score my first goal. Drive back to Kent from Bournemouth on the Saturday night. Meet up with my dad and a few friends for kind of a drink before the wedding. Married Amanda the next day. Had our wedding reception at Dartford Football Club. Of all things, pictures on the field, by the goal and everything. She's got bridesmaids peeking around the goalpost. Then she has to drive me back halfway down the M3. We stayed our wedding night at a hotel on the M3 on the Sunday night. Drove me to training the next morning because we were playing Port Vale at home on the Tuesday. Harry wouldn't give me a day off. And this was the life that she'd signed up for. No honeymoon until about 10 months later.
And this was a lady that didn't like football.
That's a lady. Yeah.
Hey, she's still here.
32 years now.
Lovely story, lovely story. I mean, the Bournemouth transfer, Gavin, when you think about it, you say, okay, you're going, it's Gillingham, it's the Bournemouth, but it was 250,000. That was a club record, both for the receiver and the club paying.
Yeah, it was. It was a significant fee. So there was a little bit of pressure. Ian Bishop had been the star player for Bournemouth as well. He just got a big move to Manchester City. So I was going in to kind of replace him, and I was only 21. So a bit of pressure down there, and new married life, new area. So we took a few months to settle.
Beautiful area.
But a lovely area, and I enjoyed playing for Harry. Unfortunately, during that time, I don't know if you remember, it was after the first season there, it was Italia 90, and
yes.
Harry was in a deadly car crash because our chief executive, Brian Tyler, died.
I've forgotten about that.
Yes, Harry was in Italy, hooked up to monitors and everything, and we weren't sure whether he'd survive. And it brought home, perspective again in life, and that football wasn't everything. And then he came back the next season, brilliantly recovered, and started to kind of work with the team again. And after a few months, obviously, I left for Newcastle.
There was a little jolly boy who did quite well with Italia 90, wasn't there?
Oh yes.
Who was he again?
We've not had a player like him since, and that's been one of the reasons, in my opinion. I mean, we've obviously got to the final this past few months, but someone like Paul Gascoigne has not been found with that power, ability to beat people and score goals. Just a magical player.
Well, wonderful player, and God bless him for everything he did for this club and for football. And all wish him very much the best in the rest of his career. Top player. Newcastle United came in, you signed for Newcastle. How lucky can you get, pal? Newcastle United coming for you, mate. How's that? That's not bad. But it was, while we always associate you with hindsight, is in at the birth of the entertainers and the captain, the side that went up and we were on takeoff. It wasn't KK that bought you were bought before that. Was it
Jim.
Bald Eagle?
Yeah.
It was a Bald Eagle.
Yeah.
How did that come about? How did you find out about it? And what were your feelings considering Dad's background?
Yeah. It was training day, normal training day at Bournemouth, and Harry Redknapp was on his phone, and he's often on his phone. And he's either doing a deal on a player or making a bet on the dogs or the horses. So I was wondering what was going on there, and he's looking at me and thinking, well, it could be a player here. He walked up to me after training and he said, Gavin, he said, Newcastle United have come in for you. And that's all I heard, because as soon as he said that, I thought, this is the club and this is what I've been waiting for. I knew Jim was there. So Jim, who'd given me my debut as a 19-year-old, he'd kept a track on me, seen my development. 2 or 3 years later, he comes in, and I went home to Amanda. Like, we just bought, like you say, Bournemouth, lovely place. We just bought our first house, got it all nice and everything. And I came home and said, Amanda, I said, Newcastle United are coming for me. I said, and we've got to move. And she just burst into tears and she went, Newcastle? Where's Newcastle? I said, it's up north and it's cold. I said, but it's a great club and we're going to go. And anyway, she was brilliant.
Amanda told me afterwards, she says it was tears of joy.
Tears of joy, yeah.
You were going to go to our own country.
Well, you ask her and she'll tell you these were the 3 of the happiest years that she's ever spent up here, so there you go.
Tremendous. But you arrived here, and when do you think, in terms of a whole career, a relatively short period,
Yeah.
but you went through 3 managers, didn't you? You had the Bald Eagle, you had Ozzy, and then you had KK.
Yeah.
Can you compare them? I know it's perhaps hard to say, but to me on the outside and you on the inside, they're different guys.
Yes.
How did you find them?
Yeah, so I arrived at Newcastle and I knew, obviously I was at a big club. I'm coming home in terms of family up here, and straight away I just felt, and my wife, you just felt at home. And Jim was under pressure because the club had got to the playoffs the year before, lost against Sunderland.
Against Sunderland, yeah.
Yeah, didn't mention it. Sorry about that.
I was going to say, I knew this evening would get spoiled sometime, and that's it.
Well, moving on quickly then. Under a bit of pressure. Some big players in terms of personalities: Roy Aitken, Mark McGee, Mickey Quinn, John Burridge, one of the great characters of the game. Ray Ranson said to me, I came to the ground, to the main ground. I came up here. Jim Smith was about to do the deal with me, and Ray Ranson said, just sign for this club. He said, because if it takes off, he said it'll be electric. And I don't know if I've told you that Jim had agreed with me the day before to increase my wages and give me a 3-year deal and a nice signing on fee. So he said, come back up here to Newcastle overnight. He said, we'll do the deal the next day at the main ground. So I get to the main ground and Jim says, go on in the office over there. He says, wait for me. He's come back in 5 minutes later. He said, I've spoken to the board and they think I've offered you too much money.
Oh, yeah.
He says, they've offered you too much money. He said, we're going to have to do something, reduce it. And I'm thinking, like, young lad, they've got me in the office here, you know, Newcastle, I'm just going to sign for the reduced fee. So what am I going to do? I've rung my dad, no answer. He's on the training field with Gillingham. I rang the PFA. They didn't give too much help on it. So I thought, okay. Jim came back in. I said, Jim, I will sign for this club at your reduced wages, but I'll only sign for 18 months, not 3 years. Now, that was a real risk again, because if I get injured, you know, I'm newly married, I've got no security. And he went, done, do the deal. Turned out to be the best deal I ever signed, because a year later, I did well, right? A year later, Newcastle wanted to, you know, all these clubs wanted me. So,
are you saying, Gavin, though, that you didn't have an agent with you?
No agent.
Because these days,
you
would only come in the last minute to sign the papers.
Yeah, no agent at all. Dealt with Jim. My dad was in all of my deals. My dad knew everyone, right? And so it was a very different situation. So I ended up signing. So Jim was under pressure. I could sense the other players were, but I didn't feel it because I was 22 years old. The pressure wasn't really on me. I got off to a good start on the field. I felt the fans liked me and I liked them. And so I kind of rode through the pressure a little bit. Jim got the sack. In came Ozzy. Ozzy pulled me aside, first day of training, and he really liked me when he was Swindon manager. He said, "You're like a diamond." He said, "I need to polish a few rough edges of you." He said, and he played me in the diamond system at the head of the diamond behind the front two. And under Ozzy, who was, as you know, lovely man, very well liked here.
Wonderful man.
Very
loved by the players.
Loved by the players, loved by the fans. Brought a lot of young players through. You know, the Lee Clarks, the Howies, and Steve Watsons, and myself being fairly young, oldest of that bunch. But he let us play with freedom, and he let me play with freedom. And of course, Ozzy was Maradona's mentor. This is like Ozzy who won the World Cup. Maradona looked up to Ozzy. So you're talking about someone with immense knowledge of football, great belief, and wanted to produce the kind of football that the Geordie fans, he knew they needed, and Ozzy wanted to play. But the thing with Ozzy was we had all these youngsters coming through, but we weren't strong enough defensively. So you know we'd lose 4-3 or something like that. Entertaining game.
That's what it was. It was entertainers, but the other side won. That was basically it.
Yes, which can only go on so long.
Yeah.
Of course.
And of course, as well, Gavin, did you feel at the time, because Ozzy was operating as a takeover was going through with John Hall. In these days, takeovers are like that.
Yeah.
You know, one day Mike Ashley's in charge, and the next day somebody else is. But in those days, you couldn't take over like that.
No.
It took a while to buy shares from each individual.
Yes.
So it took a long, long while. And he was working, and Jim was initially right at the end against the backdrop of that takeover.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that, and did it make any uncertainty?
We were aware of it as players. You're always aware of what's going on in the background. I think because we had a pretty young squad, you know, when you're young, you kind of, these things kind of roll off your back a bit easier. But obviously the manager was feeling the pressure, and I think it, you know, Ozzy was such a lovely fella as well, because and the players loved him, like Lee Clark and Ozzy was like, you know, Clarkie was like a son to Ozzy, you know, and they'd mess about on the training ground, they'd be jabbing each other and all of this. Ozzy was difficult to understand, mind, because a heavy accent, Argentinian accent, and he would say, he wouldn't say, if he tried to say obviously, it would come across obli. And we're playing at Barnsley one day, and the lads are sitting there. He's getting ready for the team talk, and the pitch was really kind of uneven and hard. And we'd been warming up, and it was like going all over the place. And he said, "Boys, today it'll be a difficult game." He said, "The pitch is obbly." And the lads were like this, trying to keep a straight face when the gaffer's trying to give his team talk. But to a man, we loved Ozzy. And, you know, players really grew. And you speak to any of them, they grew as people and players under Ozzy. But then, of course, it was a sad day when he was sacked. There were tears around the training ground. I remember driving away thinking, where are we going from here? Who are we going to sign? What's going to happen with the club? Takeovers in the background. We are not doing great in the league at this point. No. We're in a bit of trouble. We need someone that can come in and turn the ship around, and obviously there was that someone.
Yeah, the interesting thing at that time, because as part of the Magpie group I knew what was happening, and KK was actually already ensconced in the ground to come out at the press conference at 9:30 in the morning, when Freddie Fletcher, the chief exec, was sent up to Ozzy's house to give him the tin tack, so that they could then have the press conference and announce KK. And Ozzy's such a lovely man. Freddie Fletcher went up, told him he was sacked, and Ozzy Ardiles made him breakfast. I mean, he made him breakfast. I mean, anybody else would have said, "Hey, pal, get on your bike, mate. He made him breakfast, which was a lovely, lovely touch. Freddie asked if he would leave the curtains up, because when he took over his clubhouse, when Ozzy left, and he said, well, are you leaving those curtains? So they had them when he took over. Anyway, we digress. It was KK. First reaction to that, and how did it work out for you?
Yeah, I heard it on the radio driving back to the house, and literally I think it was going over the Tyne Bridge, and like we've signed Kevin Keegan, and wow, that was like Kevin, childhood hero, posters on my bedroom wall. I remember my dad saying to me when I was a youngster, said, see him, Kevin Keegan, he said, that guy he's a self-made player. Like, he has made the best of himself that he could be. Watch his attitude, look, his physique, everything about him. He's someone to emulate, and of course was one of football's first millionaires and all of this.
He wasn't a natural, Gavin, in terms of gaffer.
No,
it was just a natural. Yeah. And he has some ways, I admire this guy's more. Yeah. He worked and worked and worked to make himself what he was.
Yes. So a great hero, and then for him to be manager. So immediately I was excited. The next day we went to the training ground. He pulled all the players in front of him, and this is what you need, and this is what Newcastle need now. They need someone that can come in and command respect from the players, inspire the players, and make the players believe that they can do something at this moment in time that they probably thought they couldn't believe. And that's the art of great leadership, is to be able to, I can make you believe something you don't even think you can be at the moment.
Absolutely.
And so he pulled us all together, and we're sitting there. He's only 5'6", he walks in, but he's got great presence, as you know. And he said, listen, and this is what I liked as well, he said, if any of you want to leave this football club, he said, come see me afterwards. He said, and we'll arrange it. He said, but if you want to stay and you want to fight for this club, he said, we will survive this season. He said, and we will then take off. Just watch it happen. Now that's what you need, right? Oh. Immediately you're like, okay. And that's kind of, it's inspiring, but it's got a tough line there, because he's going to call out anyone who doesn't want to be at the club. If you don't want to be here, I don't want you here. Don't care how good you are. And so, like, I'm here. I'm inspired to get goosebumps just thinking about it. And of course, Kevin, he's was a motivator of men. Bear in mind, he'd been in Marbella playing golf with Sean Connery for 7 years. He hadn't really he hadn't even seen a football match. Comes back to, it's the only club he said he'd come back for, and knew how to motivate players. First game is Bristol City at home, and you've heard me tell the story. Maybe a few of you have before, but he's going round the team in the change room beforehand. I see him like having a word with David Kelly in the ear, having a word with Liam O'Brien, having a word with Lee Clark, and then he gets to me, and he says, he leans towards me, he says, "You're the man today." He said, "You are the man." He said, Bill Shankly used to say to me, now Bill Shankly, obviously, the great Liverpool manager, treated Keegan like a son at Liverpool. He says, Shankly used to say to me, just go out there and drop hand grenades all over the field. In other words, just go out there and cause trouble, because everywhere you go, trouble will happen for the opposition. And I thought, like, Shankly says that to Keegan, and now Keegan's saying that to me. Like, I went down that tunnel, I felt 10 foot tall, I ran all day, I didn't score, I made 2 goals, we won, I think Dave Kelly got a couple, and I always tell people, I said, Keegan's a great motivator of men, he knows what to say to people to get the best out of them on the field, and a few years later when he got the England job, Paul Scholes scored a hat-trick, and it was against Poland. Scored a hat-trick in the first game. And I read in the paper, he said, Keegan's a great motivator of men. And I was thinking, yes, that's exactly what I was saying all those years. He's a great motivator of men. And I read on in the article, and Scholes said, he said to me before the game, Bill Shankly used to say to me, go out there and drop hand grenades. And I was like, I thought I was special, but
Hey, it works, man.
it works for different. You want to say to different people to get the best out of them, and that was Keegan.
Did you realise, Gavin, I would be interested to hear your slant on this, because Keegan was one of the most wonderful motivators that I've known at Newcastle United, and Joe Harvey was exactly the same. Neither was a tactician. He wasn't a coach, he was a motivator, and he bowled brilliantly.
Yes.
He could see talent and bowled brilliantly. There was also another side to KK, which was, if you cross him, you're dead.
Yeah.
Did you see that, and were you in awe, or were players generally, or don't cross the box?
Yeah. So Kevin would say to us, "I'll treat you like men unless you act like boys." He said, "And then I'll treat you like boys." He had a hard side to him that if he was crossed. So you probably know that. That Mickey Quinn did an article early on, and he said something to the effect. Quinn, said something to the effect like, "Keegan's so lucky, if he fell in the Tyne, he'd come up with a salmon in his mouth. You know, it's just he gets good luck." And it came out. I mean, maybe Quinny said something to that effect. And the headline wasn't the best for him, but Keegan called him in the office, and he just had the article behind him and said nothing. He said nothing to him about the article, but obviously Quinny's there and seeing it behind him, and Quinny wasn't really used by Kevin, and I'm on Mickey Quinn. I loved playing with Quinn and learned a lot from him. He was a proper number 9. Anyway, his time with Newcastle was up, and Kevin shifted him out. Even with myself, you know, I think all good managers, all good leaders, they must have an element of, yes, that motivation, yes, that you know, your players need to know you care about them, but there also needs to be a little bit of fear there. Absolutely. There has to be a little bit of fear, and Kevin did have that. And even though I remember myself, you know, our promotion season, he stuck me out wide, and I didn't like to play out wide in that particular game. I mean, you could have played anywhere in that team and scored. It was that good. John Barris was behind me, and he kept pulling me back. "Get back, Gavin, you've got to defend," and I want to get forward and score. And I had that bit of the hump, and Kevin said something to the side, and I don't know what I said, and he went, "You don't pull your socks up, you'll be off in a minute." And I was captain, and I was playing well. You know, I was scoring for fun. So
you would have done it.
He would have done it, and that's fair enough. He was the boss, and so you knew he was the boss, and so he had that side, as you say, not the tactician as such. He got Derek Fazackley in there to do some good stuff with the defence, and Faz was, you know, he was good in that respect. Terry Mack was a great buffer and another motivator, someone that Kevin could rely on as loyal to him. And we all wish Terry well at the moment, obviously, because of his illness, for sure. And but Kevin was good because he had wisdom, so he could see how players played off each other and with each other in training, and then he would look and think, "How I want to get Gavin and Lee Clark close together on the field, so I just move him slightly that way and him that way." And then he pulled me in. I talk about this in the book. I think great teams, great businesses, great companies, they have harmony about them, they have balance, and we had that in the promotion season, certainly. You might want to talk about the battle beforehand, but we had this balance, and he pulled me in his office one day and says, "Look at my team. Look, when we get the goalkeeper gets it, rolls it out to Barry Venison, and then Lee Clark comes short, you come short, David Kelly goes in behind, we got Rob Lee over here." He said the movement is just incredible. So he knew that we had that wisdom to put a team out on the field that blended together and was effective. So I would say that was a big strength of Kevin's, though you can only deal with what you've got. And of course, when he first got to the club, it wasn't the greatest pool of players that he had to deal with, and so he had to get big killer. He got Big Kill Klein in, and that was a good boost for us, and he did what he needed to do to keep us up.
Can I talk about those early days and the players that were at Newcastle when you were in the entertainers' time? Pav, who we all remember with great affection, a gorgeous man. Pav is a Geordie, and he certainly was a Geordie.
Yes.
You roomed with him early doors, didn't you?
Yes, yeah. Jim Smith signed myself and Pavel within a week of each other. And Pav, young goalkeeper, no one really knew him from the Czech Republic. We both stayed in the New Kent Hotel in Jesmond. I don't know if you know that hotel.
Yes.
And I remember Pavel and just like this big giant of a guy, but just really humble. Just had that kind of quality that you can't teach people really, is that just that humility. And so he was, and then he was this good shot stopper, but a little bit erratic in the early days. And yet, because of his humility, you knew that he was going to be a learner, and you knew that he could kind of do quite well. And of course, in the years that were to follow, who knew how well he would do, and what a cult hero he'd become. And so we roomed together a few times, and we talked about other things in life, you know. And he was that kind of man. Of course, I was in Canada when I heard that, you know, he'd gone for that run and then he collapsed, and Steve Wraith was keeping me in touch. I was messaging with Steve, and you know, I obviously was very concerned. And then obviously to hear the news that he died, it was just such a sad moment, because he was a humble man with a big heart, and you know that it was a heart event that took him was quite ironic. But the day that he pulled off the shirt when we got promotion, and it was Pavel as a Geordie, that kind of was just a moment that fans will remember here forever. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Interesting, as a goal scorer yourself, Gavin, I know you were essentially centre midfield player, but you got forward and you scored a terrific amount of goals. During that period, you look at the development of the number 9, if you like. We started off with Ned Kelly, who scored a pile of goals, albeit perhaps in the second tier or in the top tier. You then saw Andy Cole coming here, who went on to score 40 in one season, and then eventually, I mean, KK's got the audacity to sell him at that time and say to fans, trust me, and we'll get Ferdinand and Sheila. It was a heck of a period, considering this was a number 9 club for number 9s, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, as you say, starting with Dave Kelly. I mean, he was a. I loved playing with Ned. He was honest. He was fit. He would run in the channels, but he was good in the air, but just very mobile. And as you say, scored important goals and lots of them. But then again, like what Kevin was good at is then moving on to the next level, and of course Coley had to bring in Coley. Andy Cole was razor sharp player, and took him a few games to settle. But once he did, you know, the sky is the limit for Coley. But then you sell Andy Cole. Where are you going to go from there? Well, you can only go Shearer or and Ferdinand, of course.
That was the ruthless side of KK, wasn't it? I mean, to sell Cole after he scored 40 goals and say, I'll eventually, and it wasn't the next day, but do better, and you get Ferdinand and Shearer, and with respect to Cole, who was magic at Manchester United, he certainly produced 2 more centre forwards at Newcastle that were extra special.
And that's what I talk about, Kevin's wisdom. You know, you might say there are certain tactical things where you're making tactical decisions. There are greater tacticians maybe, but that was a tactical move, if you like, even in the buying and the selling. And that he had the magnetic personality to bring people to this club that were of the right ilk in terms of their character, and their ability to make it happen on the field, and it was just a golden era for the club.
Absolutely. Can I take you back to? We almost went to 3rd division. When he first came, we had to get the result at Leicester. We did do, and then the next thing we win promotion, and you're skipper, and we have a wonderful season. Can you take me through that season? It got off to a flyer.
The promotion season? Yeah, first 11 games, wasn't it? We won.
And the last of those 11 is one at Macamlan, which, and I was there, and was that wonderful, or was that wonderful?
Of course.
That was Liam O'Brien.
Liam O'Brien's wonderful free kick. He's been dining out on that ever since.
He has. He still is, mate.
He still is. Yeah, no, he was a great lad, funny lad as well, Liam.
Yeah.
But yeah,
It was a special season.
a special season, and again, tactics of Keegan. He gets Venison and Beresford and Bracewell and 3 more defensive players. Well,
yes.
Yeah, but he knew that we were going to play football out from the back, and we needed a basis from which our attacking players would flow. We get off to a flyer. He said to us, the season before, when you're struggling, when you're playing in a relegation fight, you're like, every game, it's a difficult game. There's a heaviness coming up to the game. And Kevin said, but when you're winning, you can't wait for the next game. You literally can't, it can't come quick enough. You want to get out there and take the next opposition on. And of course, we get off to this flying start, and we are steamrolling teams. Like, they are not living with us. The football was just magnificent. Then, after a few games, we get Rob Lee, which was a masterstroke, to get Rob Lee from Charlton. 700 grand? 700 grand.
Steal, wasn't it?
Absolute steal. And Kevin, because my dad was still at Charlton, you see, so he knew Rob Lee, and he knew Rob Lee was coming out of contract soon. And Kevin said, what do you think of this Rob Lee at Charlton? And I said, get Rob Lee. He's got all-round great ability, and he's not reached his potential yet. My dad rates him highly. Get Rob Lee. Middlesbrough were interested in Rob Lee too. Middlesbrough were in the Premier League then. Lenny Lawrence was the manager who knew Rob Lee because of Charlton days.
Of course he did, yes.
Yeah, so Rob was talking to Middlesbrough, and Kevin, who has this persuasive power, gets Rob Lee in the office and knows Rob is a London boy. And Rob has been saying, I like to get back to visit family in London quite regularly. And so Kevin says, well, it would be better for you to sign for Newcastle because Newcastle's further south than Middlesbrough, and you'll get to London quicker. And Rob went, oh, really? He said, OK, then I'll sign. So he ends up signing, and of course, a combination of Kevin's persuasive power and Rob's bad geography led to the signing of what I think, and many would say, is the best pound-for-pound signing that Keegan made.
Absolutely. And the terrific signing for Rob Lee because he became an English international, didn't he?
Yeah, he became an England international, and I mean he came into that team and he got better with every game that he played, and just as you know, Rob's just a down-to-earth lad. But to say, Southerners don't like it up here in Newcastle, I mean, Rob Lee, it's rubbish. He loved it here, and Rob's he's a Geordie.
I mean, when that season ended with promotion, with the huge excitement on Tyneside, with the rest of the country realising something special's happening up there. Well, as skipper, as somebody that had come and been in at the birth of all that, how did that register with you? I mean, how did you suddenly think, quite, my career is now really, really taking off? And in fairness, it continued in Chelsea, but you must have felt, this was a major breakthrough for you personally, as well as for Newcastle United.
We were just ripping up the division, and we were the talk of the town. Like, you go down south, you go to West Ham, you go to Charlton, you go to wherever, and they feared us, and we'd go on the field. And there was literally a time where I was playing for Newcastle that I felt, you give me the ball, I'll score or I'll make a goal, and that's a great feeling as a footballer, to when you're at the peak of your career and you get the ball, and you can just imagine like getting the ball at St James's Park, and you pick up the ball and the crowd just starts to lift, and there's like this roar kind of thing, and gives you goosebumps, and you just feel like you can just float on air. That was the feeling I had, but all the players began to have. And what Kevin did quite well is, I would get headlines. David Kelly would get headlines because scoring goals.
Of course.
But then the next week, he would say, John Beresford, fantastic player, future maybe England international. Barry Venison. So he would profile all the other players as well, so that all the players were actually getting the credit that they deserved, and not just the guys that were scoring the goals. That led to then a really good team spirit where we were fighting for one another. So there's the thing. You need to have the man at the helm who can inspire, who can make you believe, who can bring players in that will blend together and create a team spirit. But then those players we policed it ourselves. Training sessions, Kevin didn't have to do much. We went out there on the training field. There was no way the standards were allowed to be dropped because we wouldn't let each other drop the standards. Now, I can imagine what that's been like for the last few years, yeah? Some players not really bothered or not really putting it all in that just would not have happened because we would not have let that happen. But that's what you create, and that's what hopefully you want to be able to get back to at Newcastle. You get that going here, then you're going to have a team that's going to win things or compete at the top. So it was a special time, and other teams were looking, and other big clubs were saying, these players at Newcastle are top notch.
The interesting thing from my point of view, at the time you were probably at the height of your powers. We come up and it worked so well, the whole town was buzzing, Keegan was buzzing, we were buzzing, fans were buzzing, and you left because you had to for personal reasons, and you then, thank goodness, went on had a fabulous career with Chelsea. How difficult was it to leave a project which was obviously only going in one direction, which was that way, the Newcastle United project, and how much was there inevitability, well, this is the way my life and our life's got to go, and it went terrifically well. We've got to say, Chelsea, big club, what we're going to find out tomorrow how big club it is. And you played the FA Cup final, European Cup, Winners' Cup semi, etc., etc. And can you give us a rough idea, without being too personal, what that change meant to you, and was there any difficulty in making that decision, Gavin?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm no problem making it personal. I've talked about it very openly in my book. The year that we got promotion, Amanda fell pregnant with our first child, which was to Jake, and it was amazing, with the promotion run was like the pregnancy grew, early flutters, the kicking in the belly at the end of the Leicester game at home. Jake's literally kicking every ball inside. They're really ready to come out. 2 weeks after that game, she goes into labour, and it was a very difficult labour. 48 hours, very hard for her. Forceps delivery, epidural. And then Jake is delivered, and we're just relieved. I'm looking, is it a boy or a girl? Oh, it's a boy. And then he cried, and as he put his arms out to the side, I saw that he was missing two-thirds of his forearm, so his right hand. So Jake has a third of his right forearm. And it was such a shock, because we had one scan only in those days, so we didn't know. So after all of that trauma, then we have the shock of this. And then they're doing all tests, because with limb deficiency, there can be other issues, brain, heart, lungs. And it's amazing how grateful you can be. It's just a hand in the end. And with our family being in London and my wife's mother being down there, Kevin was ringing up, how's everything? And he knew what was sort of going on, and I was keeping him informed, Kevin Keegan. And we were talking and saying, I said to Kevin, look, it might be that we may need to move back to London to be close to my mother-in-law and family. This has been quite traumatic. Kevin was great. And here's a side, football, great motivator, this great leader, done everything he's done for this town and football club. But as a human being, showed great compassion to me and Amanda. Great compassion. He said, look, I don't want you to leave. He said, I'm bringing in Peter Beardsley. He said, you, Beardsley. He said, Andy Cole. He said, it will be a good combination in there. He said, but I know if you're not at your happiest off the field, he said, you won't play at your best on the field. He said, I'll tell you what, I won't outprice you in the market. And he was as fair as that. Within a month, Glenn Hoddle, who'd been interested in me when he was at Swindon a year before, he got the Chelsea job, and his first phone call was to ask me if I would join, and it was 1.25 million, big fee then. I think Shearer had just gone for 2.75 or something like that to Blackburn, so it's a big fee. And it was just the right timing, and I said yes to Glenn, another great manager, good football mind, someone I could grow under. Kevin said to me, he said, you'll learn more from playing with Glenn Hoddle in training than anything else. He said he's a genius. But it was bittersweet, you know, because obviously leaving here, where we loved it so much, leaving the football field where we got promotion to the Premier League, and you know, I think I saw one of those, you know, you get the end of season goals roundups, they play the old stuff on YouTube, and I saw the first game that I captained Newcastle, I believe it was West Ham at home in that promotion season, and you see me walking out the tunnel, and I've got the ball in one hand, and in those days it was only like a bit of tape round that was the captain's armband, a bit of tape round the shirt, and it pans in on my face as I go out the tunnel, and I just do this. I can see I breathe in as I'm going out, and the roar just surrounds me, and I just think at that moment as a footballer, I'm thinking it doesn't get better. I'm captain of Newcastle, you know. Absolutely. And so that moment, that summed it up what it was for me. And I'll just tell you, just to maybe as we're finishing on Newcastle. So the season before, we escaped relegation. We played Leicester away. We won 2-1. I scored. We stayed up, and my granddad Tom, you know, I told you about my granddad Tom, Geordie Tom. He'd had a stroke. It was the first of several strokes, and he was in hospital, so he didn't make the game. And so I took him my number 8 shirt. Didn't even have the names on the back in those days. I took him the number 8 shirt to the hospital bed and gave it to him after the game. And he couldn't really say too much, but there was this tear in his eye. And he held the shirt. And a few years later, he did die of a stroke. And my dad gave me back the shirt with a little letter, a little note, and said, "Your granddad," he said, "he never washed that shirt till the day he died, because he said you sweated blood for his team." And I think that sums up probably the family. Yeah, it sums up the family connection that I had here, the way that I was then able to translate that to my own game, the relationship I had with the fans, and so that even though it finished maybe not the way that I'd have wanted it, it was still the close of a great chapter in my life and football career.
Absolutely. And Dad told you, sweat for Newcastle.
My granddad said, sweat blood for their team.
Granddad, yes.
Yeah.
If I may, before we round up with the Chelsea episode, the book itself, which is why you're here tonight, From Pitch to Pulpit, which is quite an extraordinary and inspiring book. And you deal with many aspects, whether it's racism, mental health, etc., but looking first at the Christianity part, which is so important in your life. And the interesting thing for me, looking at it from where I was standing, was that you weren't from a particularly religious family,
no.
And you discovered it when Mum took you to church and to see the minister who invited you to the youth do. And can you tell me, and it is a fun story because you're a footballer at the time, so you're not Jack the Lad, but you perceive to other people as a big it's the ultimate, isn't it, to so many men, so to so many girls.
Sure.
What was your feeling at the time at that moment?
So I was 18 years old, living at home. I've achieved the schoolboy dream. Everything the world says will make you happy. I've got the great job, the career ahead, a bit of money, a bit of fame. And even though I'd done that, followed in my dad's footsteps, had that, because football was my God, if I was playing well, I was up. If I was playing badly, I was down. As I say, I'm 18, living at home at the time. I'm thinking, wow, you know, is there the greatest of happiness in this? So I'm questioning at this point. And then I did follow my mum to church one night. I said, I'll just keep you company. And the minister said, would you fancy coming back to a youth meeting afterwards? And I said, yeah, no problem. And I pulled up to the youth meeting that night in my Ford Escort XR3i. Remember those cars? Proper 1980s sports car. Look it up. There's a few people nodding. A few of you look very vacant, the younger ones. Look it up.
It was Flash.
It was Flash. It was a nice sports car. I had the hair to match, long, thick, a leather jacket and tight jeans. And I get out that.
Hey, that was cool at the time.
The only thing I've got left of that is the tight jeans. No, the hair's gone, the leather jacket's gone, the car's gone. But so I get out the car and I walk into that meeting. It's half a dozen other young people my own age, but I'm the one that's in the in crowd. I've got everything, you know, the world says will make you happy. I'm the footballer. I've got the car. I've got the career. I've got the bit of money. But when they spoke about their faith and when they spoke about Jesus Christ, there was a joy and reality they had that I didn't have. And then it was just over the next couple of weeks of just hearing what the minister was saying from the Bible about who Jesus is and what he came to do, that I realised that my greatest problem wasn't to gain the approval of the crowd on a Saturday, but to be in a right relationship with God. And he'd made that possible through the life, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. And so I became a Christian when I was 18. And it was an amazing thing because suddenly football wasn't God anymore. Jesus is God, and yet football was really important, but it freed me because I was then not the sum of my performances on a Saturday anymore. It was more than that. My identity lay elsewhere. My hope lay elsewhere. And then it enabled me to be the best kind of footballer I could be. And deal with ups and downs better.
How difficult was that, Gavin? Because looking at it from the outside, the football world, perhaps especially in those days, when you come up to Newcastle, for example, which is when I knew, etc., it wasn't the easiest thing to necessarily say,
sure,
I'm a religious guy.
Yeah.
And that takes courage, and we've had so many other things that have come out since that needs courage within this sport. How difficult, how easy, how did you not care what the reaction was? I'm talking about in the dressing room,
yeah,
I'm
sure,
talking about fans. How, and you see players these days that will cross themselves on the pitch, etc. But it was a different situation. And you handled it expertly because your career absolutely took off. How difficult or easy was it for you to put the two together?
I was honest with people in the dressing room, straight at QPR and the lads here at Newcastle about my faith. And there's a bit of mickey taking, you know, when you work with a bunch of men, they'll take the mickey out of anything, wear a new pair of shoes or a new tie or anything that's different. But then I think they look and they watch your life to see footballers are not stupid. You know, you're on the field of battle with them. That your character is laid bare. They know if you're, you know, having your people on or not, and they watch your life and to see if there's an authenticity to it. And it's amazing. I had some amazing conversations with players you'd never think would ask about Christianity here at Newcastle on the team coach or what have you. So I think that that side of things, you know, handled reasonably well. Maybe could have been better at times, but there was one time where I talk about this in the book. I did an article, I think it was the Sunday Sun, and they were talking about my faith, my Christian faith, in the article, and that I was just saying in the article that ultimately, you know, my identity is in Jesus Christ. My hope lies elsewhere, and the headline on the Sunday was "Why I Can Never Be One of the Lads" by Gavin Peacock, and I'm captain of the team. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I did not really mean it to come across like that at all. And
that's how it was then, or the
misunderstanding, a bit of banter from the guys in the dressing room. Hopefully it was cleared up, but yeah. And I was a young guy as well. I'm in my 20s, and you know, I wasn't able to articulate things the way that I can now in my 50s. That's why as well I chose to write the book when I became 50. So there's a certain level of maturity you have at 50 where you can reflect and integrate your faith and life. And my book, really, I describe it as a story of life in all of its complexities, that's set against the backdrop of the beautiful game, but with a bit of a floodlight of the Christian faith on it, so that it's a human interest story. There's all the stories of football. I take you on the field with me. I take you into cup finals, into dressing rooms, and all of that goes on around it. But there's stories of life. There's about suffering. It's about losing and winning and racism and mental health. And that means that all of you, these are all the issues that touch all of us. And so then along the way, there's just that little bit of light that I'm shining. It's not a preachy book, but it's just a little bit of light that I'm shining on each of those issues. So that I think I've found feedback so far that it's a different kind of biography that football fans can enjoy, but all people in all walks of life, men, women, young, old. And that's what I wanted from the book, because really, I think sometimes when footballers write books, it can be great for fans to read. You love that kind of, the big games, but it can also be, there's a distance there. It's something you'll never be able to quite realise, because it's a different world. But I'm writing it in a way as, well, we're just all the same, really, and we're all going through this life, and everyone suffers, and everyone has issues that they're dealing with, and I'm trying to just say that football is just a backdrop of this, and that there is great hope to be found, and there is greater glory in life than football fame and fortune.
Can I ask you, because I think, Gavin, what is fascinating for the ordinary guy, and including me in this, who admires what you've done in life, but then knows the sort of fame, adulation, and money that was involved, not just on you being a superstar footballer, but then going on having a terrific life in the media, as Alan Shearer has had, as an example, after a career. So you still remain in the spotlight, you're still making dough, you're still in the beautiful game. I mean, you had a heck of a career with Macedonia. You were in your height as well, if you like, on that side of the coin, and walked away from it and become what you are now, and you're in Calgary and you're a pastor. It's quite amazing, it's quite staggering, and I mean that being in awe and sitting here talking to you. How, I know the answer to this before I asked you, it's much how difficult is it? It wasn't, quite obviously, because it was choice. But people would see it as difficult. How did you equate all that? And was it a matter of just finding the ultimate peace, if you like?
Sure. I loved working on the BBC Match of the Day, and it went better than I could have imagined, because it's a pretty small squad of pundits they have, and I wasn't Alan Shearer retiring. I didn't have all those England caps. I wasn't that profile. I remember when Shearer came to the Beeb, and he's just straight on all the top programmes because he's Shearer, and people were saying, he's not saying enough, because, well, he's not saying enough because for all of his career he had to be very guarded with what he said. But now, as you see, he's quality. He's quality. He's a quality guy. He's a quality. His comments are always spot on. So I had to work hard at my career, but I loved to try and bring insight from the game to people in the living room. Football fans are more educated than they've ever been because they see everything, they read everything. So you don't want to state the obvious all the time, like, the boy did good, he knocked it in, and the lad knocked it in the net. Well, you can see that. I want to give you insight as to why that happened, and we'll go back. And so I really enjoyed that, and it was going very well. And I'd never, as I say, a Christian since 18, but never had a sense that I was going to go into church ministry or leadership till around 2006. World Cup in Germany. My career's really on the up. I'm turning down work at this stage because I've got so much on. Amanda got quite ill, had a kidney infection, was in hospital for a couple of weeks, and it was a bit dicey a couple of times, and as is often the case, trials and suffering kind of recalibrate your focus a little bit. And at that stage I just started thinking, well, maybe there was a sense there, maybe some, maybe church leadership is for me. And so I spoke to leaders that I knew in the church. They said they identified certain gifts. They were going to give me some opportunities to exercise those gifts in terms of some teaching or preaching in the church. So I'm doing that, I'm going to Cambridge University and doing Old Testament and New Testament studies with all the guys that are going to be vicars and ministers. All they want to do is talk to me about football. They just want to say, oh, they were going, oh, what you said at the weekend on Match of the Day. And I'm just like, I'm here to actually study. But anyway, and I knew then I'm going to give it up. And I said to a man, I'm going to give up the second dream career here to spend some time to prepare for church ministry. How about, I could do it in England, but my profile's so high now with the TV work.
Yeah.
What about if we go away to anonymity where people won't care about my career and they would just really hear what I had to say from the Bible, and it'd be a good life test for us. Our kids were 15 and 12 at the time, so difficult ages. And I dropped that bombshell to the BBC, and they thought it was a surprise. But 2008, I did the Euros, Austria and Switzerland, and then we flew to Calgary, Alberta, and we've been there ever since. I did a 3-year master's degree, thought we would come back, had some offers to come back here, got another offer in Calgary, and so I'm an associate pastor, so kind of like assistant manager, a church in Calgary. And amazingly, doors have opened for me, and I speak now around the world. I travel to Africa, China, lots of parts of the States, and I get to do some of this stuff, tell my story, life story. I teach a lot on the family and raising up men and children in the home, being a good husband and father, and obviously preaching in church. And it's one of those, it doesn't get the headlines, but it's an amazingly rewarding thing, because you're actually dealing with people in the highs of their lives, like weddings and great celebrations, and then in the lows of their lives where there's death, where there's suffering, and you're shepherding and walking through with them, and so it's dealing with people's souls, and that has eternal value. And so it really is a very rewarding, been a hard 10, 12 years, but a very rewarding time too.
That's before we finish the football. Very fleetingly with Chelsea. I mean, what a career. FA Cup final. When you played Manchester United in the FA Cup final, you scored home and away against Man U, weren't you, before the final?
Yep.
And hit the bar in the final?
In the final.
When you might have changed the course of the game if that had gone in.
Yeah, it was a great Manchester United team. Cantona and Mark Hughes up front, and Giggs and Kanchelskis, Keane and Ince, and so on. And I'd scored, we did the double over them during the season, 1-0 home and away. I scored both goals. And in the cup final, we were doing well in the early stages, and I hit a volley going over Schmeichel's head. Thought this has got to be in, and Peacock scores again. Chelsea 1-0 up, we'll win the cup, and it hit the crossbar, and just an inch lower, and it would have gone in. And who knows then? The inches is the thing between success and defeat at times, and they went on to win it. 3 years later, Roberto Di Matteo, playing for Chelsea against Middlesbrough in the cup final, bursts through, hits the same crossbar I did, 1 inch lower, it goes in, Chelsea win, and silverware flows.
Yeah, it is that sort of difference. Yeah. Just before we go on to the current situation, if I may mention, because this fascinated me, when you left Chelsea, you went on record, if I'm right, of saying you left Chelsea, there was a change of manager, Ruud Gullit had come in, and he didn't bother speaking to you. Yep. And this just resonated with me, because in Newcastle he did exactly the same with Alan Shearer and Rob Lee, and was very unsuccessful and got tin-tacked after Sunderland. But that must have hurt you and made you think, I've got to get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a choice. Ruud was a brilliant footballer. I mean, it's undeniable. Like when he signed, when it was a masterstroke that Hoddle got him, he was magnificent. He was this great athlete. He wasn't even at his peak when he came to us, but he could hold off 2 or 3 players at once. Every decision he made on the field, he did it with class, and it was good. When he became a manager, who, me? You want me to shut up? Oh, okay. I know, I'm kidding.
Careful, kids.
When Ruud became a manager, it changed. And so from being my teammate, all of a sudden, so you come in on a match day and Ruud would just have the team initials on the board over there, and you might have played one week, and then your initials, you weren't even on the bench the next week. And this was happening during the pre-season, and I thought, bear in mind, I've been captain at Chelsea, played most games for the first 3 seasons I was there under Hoddle, and suddenly I'm seeing this. And so I thought, I better go see Ruud here. I was in the last year of my career. I said, look, Ruud, I said, I'm coming into the last year of my career. At the end of this year, I'll be a free transfer. I said, it doesn't look like I'm going to be in your plans. I'm willing to be, the way things are going, it's a squad game and all of this, and Zola's coming in and all these good players. If it's a squad thing, I'm willing to fight for my place. But if I'm not in your plans, maybe we should get that straight now. And, maybe the club gets money for me now and I move on. And he seemed okay, and then he just never spoke to me again. And I trained with the kids, I trained with the reserves. There was me, David Rocastle, John Spencer, Rocky Rocastle. Couldn't have met a nicer man.
Oh.
And the way he was treated, the way I was treated, I just knew the writing was on the wall. So to the point where Dennis Wise actually went to Ruud's house to say, you need to actually communicate better with the players. So you've got Keegan and the great man management, and then you've got Ruud and not good man management. Brilliant player, but not good man management. So it was a shame that it ended that way. And so I wasn't surprised and I keep in touch with Rob Lee, I wasn't surprised when the Rob Lee thing came about, and I was watching the Shearer thing, and I go, you've taken on Shearer here, it's a different kettle of fish. You won't win.
Yeah, you won't win that one.
You won't
on hindsight.
No, you won't win that one. And of course then that came to pass. Now, if I saw Ruud, would I shake his hand? Of course now. It was just, but it was one of those things that wasn't right at the time, and it meant me leaving Chelsea.
Fabulous player, but he was well named. He was rude. He just didn't. Anyway, right up to date, and then a couple of questions for you. Newcastle United currently, you've come back home. I know you're a Londoner, but for us, you're an adopted Geordie, you're back home, and we love you, and we're glad you're here. Tomorrow you're going to a game which is Newcastle v Chelsea. I can't think of a better game for you to go to.
No.
We're in the middle of transition with a takeover which has gave us all hope again after 14 years of living down the pit shaft in midnight. And we've got hope again. Yes. Can I ask you, sitting here tonight, going to the game tomorrow, your feeling about perhaps, only perhaps, we might go back to the entertainers?
To the entertainers. Well, I hope. I mean, I was here at a turning point, right? There was a takeover that happened, and things weren't going so well on the field. And could fans have even imagined, going to those entertainer days? So yeah, I mean, I am very, very hopeful. Ashley had to go, and it was on the cards for a long time. And just people was thinking it might never happen because it should have happened several times before. Bleeding the club dry. The new owners, I hope, obviously there's the money, now that's important, clearly, look at what happened with Chelsea.
Yeah.
That's very important, but of course you have to get the right man at the helm.
And they will.
Sorry?
And they will.
Yeah, and they will. And then that right man, combined with director of football or whoever, has got to bring in the right players. And so you've got a twofold thing, because this is going to be a difficult season, right? It's not going to be an easy ride up the league.
The most terrifying part is now.
Now. So in the transfer window, what you got to spend? Is it 70 million? I'm not sure. You got to get players in that are going to hit the ground running to keep the team up, and then with a long view to rebuilding. And I think personally, it's a rebuilding that needs to happen through the whole club. Through the whole club, right down to training ground facilities, little things. When I think back to turning points where I was here at Newcastle or I was at Chelsea, it was the little things that the bosses did. Like I can think of Glenn Hoddle at Chelsea. We used to eat biscuits and tea after training. Big pot of tea, middle of the dressing room. Hobnobs, digestives. You were on a biscuit rota. Dennis Wise would ring you up. Peacock, it's Tuesday. Make sure you're bringing good biscuits or you'll be on a double shift next week. And we'd be doing all our good training and diving into him. Hoddle's gone, no. He says, everyone stays. We get a chef in and he starts feeding the players properly, even educating players on diet. He poured money into the training field. He got the showers sorted out. Little things behind the scenes that are crucial to actually then... my cousin tells me, is it the ice baths, they're still having them in...
Wheelie bins.
Wheelie bins. Ice baths in the wheelie bin. I mean, well, there you go. It can't be so. So those kind of things. And then I would even say, you know, building right from the roots, even with the kids and that, and getting a thread of people at the club who know the club, even if... Let's say, for instance, it might not be at all. Let's say you have someone like a Warren Barton, and then let's say they've got their coaching badges and they've got some talent, and you bring them in at some level. Now, it might not be that they're first team coach,
sure,
but they're in and around the ground. They're in and around, and you get that kind of black and white heartbeat going. I think that would be very important, alongside them bringing in that man that can kind of spur it on to the front.
Before we finish, any questions there? The guy here straight away. Yes, sir, shout up if you...
Just touch on the straight away there. When you bring KK back, just for
The gentleman's asking, just in case you couldn't hear, whether you would bring KK back.
just yes, the feeling. Bring it back to get with Gavin again.
Yeah, I'm biased, right? So, yeah, I'm biased. I mean, I haven't spoken to Kevin for years, but I mean, it would be clearly a popular move initially. Would it be the right move long term? I don't know. You'd have to speak to.
No, it wouldn't be long term.
Yeah. To be around the club for sure in some form.
Personally, I would love KK to be an ambassador in the way that Shearer would be an ambassador.
Yeah.
I don't want him to manage Newcastle United anymore because the wonderful days have gone. That was yesterday, today's today, and we're looking to tomorrow. But ambassador, both of them, absolutely, because they were treated atrociously by Ashley. Yes, sir.
Oh, Gavin, can you tell me your thoughts after Crew 3-0 down when you were 4-3 up and you got the hat-trick?
Yes.
Funny you should say that. You remember that, Gavin remembers that, and I looked it up, and then I remember that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Go on.
Well, a hat trick for Newcastle, coming back from, and it was a. The other thing is, it was a true hat trick. Right foot, left foot, and a header.
That's a perfect hat trick. Yes, gentlemen down here before we finish, yes, sir.
Gavin, what we need to do is get people surrounded around the club, like yourself, like Shearer, like all the other players that understand the club, know what it means to the Geordie nation. That's what we need now, to bring unity back to the club and get it going again.
You do need that as well, because more than ever, with clubs in general, there's a sense of a loss of history. I think we've you know, I'm talking broadly in cultural terms. There's a rewriting of history going on. We're forgetting the past. We're forgetting what made Britain, for instance, in many ways. And it's happening at clubs as well, and especially where players are coming from all over the world. They don't really understand necessarily the history of Newcastle. So then having that continuity with those around the club that do know it, that do get the heartbeat, that do understand, that helps educate those players, and they begin to catch that. Then it becomes a contagious thing. And so that's one of the key things. And with Newcastle, some people will say, well, it's the same with every club, but yeah, I mean, it's more than even on the Saturday. It's about the people. It's about the city. It's about a sense of identity. It's about coming together, and it's about a hope of glory. And you need to get that if you're going to get Newcastle. If you do get that as a player and as a manager, you've got the heartbeat. Then you'll start to produce different things on the field. And from my own personal point of view, maybe I'll have a little chat with Manda Staveley or whoever, some of the other owners tomorrow. Club chaplain. could be on the cards for me. Club chaplain, and then midfield coach. Do like a bit of both, yeah. Attacking midfield, get them mid. We need to get more goals from midfield.
We've got the future of the club there in one. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been told that we've won well over the time I was supposed to keep us up here. May I say, before you put your hands together, I'm only saying it on behalf of you all and on behalf of me, because basically I'm a fan like everybody else. It is a privilege and it is uplifting after what we've gone through to talk to somebody that means so much in the history of this magnificent club. Hands together, Gavin Peacock, ladies and gentlemen. Gavin Peacock. Please, your applause, Gavin Peacock.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you. Cheers, Gibson.